I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. I'm very happy to be back with these two gentlemen this week, as I am every week. Maybe I'm just in a good mood today, fellas, but I really want to get into it. Before we do that, remember, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Let's go ahead and introduce my two good friends sitting beside me through the magic of virtual technology. First up is a jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, the big homie, Ben Duffy. How you feeling today, Ben?
I'm feeling pretty well. It is, of course, Halloween as we record this. Kids will be knocking on my door within a few short hours. Thought I would give you guys a little show and tell time, a little indication of what it's like to have Halloween in the Duffy household. As anyone who's watched this show for a while knows, my wife is a nurse, and specifically, she is a wound, ostomy, and continence specialist. You know, she did a lot of school for that. She helps a lot of people. But in my home, on Halloween, you get a pumpkin that has not a jack-o'-lantern face, but a colostomy bag. I wanted to fill like the bag with like pumpkin seeds or coffee beans or something, so it looked like actual like shit. But we get colostomy pumpkin. So you go away. Other than that, I'm doing just fine. But I live in a disturbing house. Because she doesn't even think that's weird or gross. She's just like, well, you know, that's a jack-o'-lantern this year.
Well, pumpkins have a lot of fiber in them, and what else are you going to do with that fiber?
This one has a little less now. It's getting all cleaned out.
Got to go somewhere.
Yep. Got to do it. All right. So, of course, every week the panel is anchored by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. Also, my good friend, Mr. J. Petrie. How you feeling, man?
I got on my Halloween costume. It's me with a hat. I'm pretty sure that hasn't happened in a very long time. Of course, I have a very festive shirt on. You can probably see the
Oh, it's broken.
Yeah, it's a very festive Halloween shirt. I guess I'll be straightforward though, because stat of the week, you know, you can't really make something fun like how many Halloween fight cards or whatever. So I'll just talk about what happened. Actually, it's kind of scary if you think about it. What the stat is? The stat is 4. There have been 4 main events in the UFC this year that have ended by injury. 4. That is like a record by a factor of 4. We've never had more than 1 injury knockout in some year for UFC, and we've had what? Can you think of the people? You got Ortega, you got
Rakic,
you got Alexander Rakic, you have Tom Aspinall, and now you have Calvin Kattar. So something spooky is going along, and it's not just in the Apex, but yeah, that's your horror themed stat of the week. It's 4,
and it doesn't even include like what happened in Bellator with Aaron Pico.
Oh, yeah.
What we talked about last week with TJ Dillashaw and Aljamain Sterling. I mean, that was a co-main event. So something's going on. A lot of limbs falling apart, a lot of strange things happening in the cage. But something even stranger happened this weekend. And I have a feeling that's going to be the answer to the question I'm going to throw out to you gentlemen to kick things off. What fight do you think more people watched this weekend? We had Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva. We had Calvin Kattar versus Arnold Allen. We had Bellator setting up shop in Milan, Italy. We had Vasily Lomachenko return to action and pick up a win. What do you think more people were tuned into this weekend?
I'm going to go off the beaten path, actually, and not answer the way that you would expect. I think more people watched Loma versus Ortiz because of its availability on ESPN. I feel like there's more. It's funny. Okay, how do you describe it? They're according to we're in the combat sports sphere. We're in a bubble. We know this. We're kind of isolated. When Aaron Bronstetter came on and we had a conversation about like Bellator followers to realize, okay, AJ McKee isn't as popular as we think they are. Well, in this case, I believe there would be more curiosity and interest and engagement in Paul versus Silva, but I think in terms of actual eyeballs, probably Loma. I mean, the UFC is on ESPN Plus, and we don't know ESPN Plus numbers, but we know they're lower than ESPN regular cards, and ESPN regular cards don't crack 1 million. And Bellator on Showtime in the middle of the day on Saturday, there were like 14 people, and one of them was me for like the prelims. So that doesn't even count because it was on YouTube. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm feeling Loma, but maybe what are you guys feeling?
I think the Lomachenko fight might be sneaky high on the list. I understand that I don't always have the best handle on how widely watched boxing is, but one thing I use as kind of a barometer of that is the Mexican bars around me. You know, because anytime Canelo fights, they are all running it. And yeah, but like Jay, you're muted, by the way.
Yeah.
Here, some, you know, we're definitely advertising that, hey, you know, come watch with us. But yeah, maybe it's just the bubble I live in. But I feel as though Paul versus Silva was the most talked about event. And I have the feeling that a good number of people either just actually bought the thing or availed themselves of less than legal means to watch it.
I'm with you on this one, Ben. Like Jay, I think you bring up a good point, because when we talk about what more people were watching, we have to take into consideration what's available on a free platform.
Exactly.
Like that means a lot. So perhaps even if Lomachenko had more eyeballs on it than Paul Silva, or even Kattar and Allen, since that was behind a paywall with ESPN Plus, you know, maybe there's a way to scale that. And I'm sure smarter people that are into the statistics beyond that. I mean, you're one of those stat guys, so maybe you have a way of scaling it, or familiar with ways to scale that. But I will say that a lot of people who are in the combat sports bubble didn't realize that Vasily Lomachenko was fighting this weekend.
That's correct.
Like, a lot of people had no idea. And if people who engage on the social media platforms talking about combat sports, people who draw a paycheck, you know, talking and writing and, you know, and opining about combat sports didn't know about it, I would be very surprised if a lot of people who just have ESPN, you know, as part of their regular cable subscription or YouTube TV or whatever, were aware. And maybe they caught it because they were just flipping channels and saw it. But I would venture out to say that Paul Silva definitely was the winner as far as the number of eyeballs. Keep in mind too, the sort of crowd that Jake Paul attracts, gonna be kids with their parents, and you think a whole family, which, as funny as it is, a whole family sitting there to watch Jake Paul. But that's, I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. You know, at one of the Paul brother fights, that there are families that go there, and this is a family outing. So I've got to say that's got to take the cake.
I think it was Luke Thomas was talking about the shocking number of like entitled brat, spoiled brat, rich kids. You know, I mean kids as in like 16 or under that are walking around with like fur coats and $1,200 cell phones with bedazzled things on them. I feel like ESPN has the baseline with just if any time in the world ESPN's going to have boom this number, that kind of thing, which is how PFL has sometimes overperformed, I suppose, because hey, it's on ESPN. It just happens to be that the barbershop has ESPN on all the time, or the sports bar or Applebee's will have an ESPN channel up, or anything like that goes for that. But I think you're also onto something about the amount of interest that was in Paul Silva. Now you have to think, I mean, obviously you're right, Ant, to weight the audiences, because you're paying $60 to see Paul Silva versus flipping on ESPN to see Loma, you know, be tested more than a lot of people expected he would be tested. And that counts for more, because if people are throwing the, you know, that's a lot of money for a, let's be honest, a one fight card. Uriah Hall was not the co-main event. It was Ashton Silva, who is good.
H2O.
Yeah. You know, 7-0, young Thundercat. He's 18. He's like, just went to his prom. Real cool. Okay, that's great. but he's not, a draw. So it's a one horse show. And then you wonder about like last Paul performances. Paul versus Woodley 1 did about what 500,000 pay-per-view buys. Paul versus Woodley 2 did like 65,000. So you wonder if the novelty is starting to rain down, but there still seemed to be a lot of interest from the MMA world in the same vein of like Conor going to fight Floyd. That morbid curiosity. I think there was a lot more of that appeal than when Woodley or Askren went over, but that may be just me.
And this was kind of the last hope for some MMA fans that like someone was going to shut this kid up.
Exactly.
I picked Silva to win comfortably. I wasn't like wishing or hoping for it. Like I like Jake Paul just fine. He's annoying, but most celebrities are annoying. Yeah. We got a much better fight than I expected. But yeah, I can see why this would have generated interest in a way that Paul versus Askren, and certainly Paul versus Woodley 2 would not have, because when you're running back, terrible fight. I'm surprised it sold a tenth as many, and then all of a sudden we actually got a nasty knockout.
Yeah, I think Paul Woodley 2 just is an outlier. That just
I guess
falls into its own realm. But man, we got to have this conversation, gentlemen. Is it time to take Jake Paul seriously? As Ben said, this was the last hope for a lot of us MMA diehards of shutting this Paul kid up and kind of ending this sort of YouTube celebrity gimmick that's invaded the boxing world. Do you respect Jake Paul's abilities now?
Yeah, and I did going into this. He's turned into a solid club level boxer. It reminds me of what Mike Jackson said to me about CM Punk, like before they fought a couple years ago. He's like, I can't remember if I said this last week, so apologies if I did, but he's like, CM Punk is a guy that actually loves MMA and, even at 36 or whatever he was, just wanted to actually give it a try and see if he could do this thing and be decent at it. But because of his fame, he couldn't possibly do it as an amateur or on like some LFA undercard somewhere. He had to start at the UFC level because otherwise it would have been exploitative. Yeah. Just, it would have been ridiculous for him to be fighting on an LFA undercard. It's a similar thing for Paul. Like, you can tell that he loves boxing and he really wants to be a good boxer and he wants to test himself against as good a boxer as he can find, but while still making the amount of money that makes it worth his while. And I think that might be what runs out next, because I think he's getting to the point where if he wants to box, he's just going to have to box boxers.
Yeah.
And most boxers don't make as much money as Jake Paul. So like flat out, most boxers, even very good boxers, don't make as much money as Jake Paul does boxing. So he's going to have real hungry boxers calling for fights with him. He's going to have fighters that are a little over the hill calling for fights with him, and they probably aren't going to pay as well as his fight with his first fight with Tyron Woodley or his fight with Anderson Silva. And he's just going to have kind of a decision to make.
Yeah. So a matter like, how much do you really love doing this? Yeah. It's big decision to make. I mean, let's talk about the actual action that took place on Saturday. My prediction was much like yours, Ben. I thought Anderson Silva was going to come out there and comfortably win this fight. I had a late stoppage. I mean, just because, we know Anderson is 47 years old. We know Jake Paul is like 25, and obviously a 47-year-old man from a fitness standpoint typically can't hang in there with a 25-year-old. But Anderson has been different in his later years. Like, this is a guy who repeatedly showed a lot of fight IQ, brought that fight IQ over into the boxing realm, combination striker, great understanding of distancing and movement. I thought those technical challenges would be in front of Jake Paul, and we'd see the true inexperience of him not being a real fighter, if you want to say, show themselves. And instead, did we see a ever improving version of the gimmick that started, kind of invading our consciousness, or did we see, 47 years old catch up to the spider?
That's the trap. That is the biggest trap that I myself am trying to navigate about. How do you analyze this performance? Do you analyze it from the fact that Anderson Silva, 47 years old, a ton of fight mileage on him, looked good against Tito Ortiz and what was Tyler Treese's term, JCC Jr., the fail son? What do you make of those performances versus Paul? And you look at how Silva went out there and you thought, okay, that looks like a 47-year-old. That they're especially towards, about the 6th round after that, you're like, oh, okay, now we're it's no longer going to be the Silva takes over late, because I too thought Silva was going to win this fight, outboxing him, out hustling him. But the damage that he took, Anderson Silva took physical damage that he has never really taken in his fight career. And that is not because Paul hits harder than the other guys that Silva has faced. That is not because that Paul is a better this, that, or the other thing. In fact, he has larger gloves, which lessen the impact of the blow. So it isn't some sort of Paul is a freakish power striker or anything like that. But the damage that was inflicted really caught up to Silva in a way that happens when you get older. You guys know, you're older than I am, that the things you wake up and you're a little tired. Yeah, I had to. But no, seriously.
I'm not the one who puts this fucking show at 3 p.m. Okay, I'm just saying.
and Jay, respect your elders.
Yes. Sorry, I'm sorry, sirs. But no, but really, the way he reacted, I don't know how to describe it other than he felt older. And that takes away from Paul's performance, because Paul, for a lot of the fight, outboxed Silva. Like, it was the 3rd or 4th round where he was really getting into a groove, pot-shotting Silva in a way that I thought would be the exact opposite would happen. And the power that he was inflicting was enough to get Silva's respect, and Silva's activity level was not enough to be able to give it back. Well, it wasn't because he was holding back, because he really went all out and he had his limits. So I think Paul leveled up, no doubt about it. I mean, he got past Anderson Silva, and even though he was the betting favorite, which, by the way, he was a pretty hefty betting favorite after a while, he really, how we were talking about before, how the money train would end. And, especially if Silva wins, you're kind of out of luck here. Well, even by beating Silva, he's in a tough spot. And we kind of touched on this, because it's like, think of it similarly to Sean O'Malley beating Peter Yan. Sean O'Malley won the decision, whether we like it or not, over Peter Yan, and is now the #1 bantamweight. He is very limited for what he can do next, because it doesn't make sense financially or rankings wise, or you beat this guy, do you really go down to fight number 10 Dominic Cruz next? Well, Paul has beaten Anderson Silva, and he's now 6-0 as a pro, or 6-0. Anyway, I think he's 6-0
or 9-0.
No, not that.
He's sick.
No, I'm thinking of the new kid. Yeah.
Ashton. Anyway, he's like 6-0 now, but he's beaten Anderson Silva. So, like, the next fight's Diaz, and then what? If he fights boxers, Tommy Fury, who cares? Are people really going to shell out money to see that fight? No. He is in the corner of eating the oatmeal on the outer edge of the bowl because it's cooler on the outside than going to fight a boxer for $15,000. And that's and I say this with respect and disrespect, that he should know his place. He's making crazy money fighting these fighters that aren't as dangerous as they could be, and they're not established boxers, and he's making great money. If he goes and tries to enter himself into the contention, shut the hell up, Mohammed Suleiman. If he tries to go into WBC territory and do something, he's spinning his wheels, wasting his time, and not making much money. So I think it's kind of like an experiment, right, guys? It's like a laboratory experiment.
Well, the thing is, there is I think I'm of different minds with this because first, let's address the lack of opponents out there that make sense for him. Anderson Silva, like I think one of you said last week, he was kind of thought of as like the end game boss.
Yeah,
like this was
the final boss.
The final boss of this whole run for Jake. But he does still have Nate Diaz out there. The problem with that is that you're talking about someone who will be grossly undersized against Paul. And then the visual just doesn't line up. Like, remember seeing him face off with Tyron Woodley, and Woodley, was a muscular guy and all, but he was still significantly shorter than Paul, and it showed what he physically what that looked like. It just didn't match. We're talking about a guy who fought at 170, and he was 190 coming into the ring that night. Nate Diaz is a 155er. Okay, so he might be taller, he might be lankier and have more reach, but to be fighting a guy who weighed in at 200 pounds or walks around about 200 pounds, this doesn't make sense. Just from a size standpoint, you got maybe you can call up Vitor Belfort, but does that name ring the same bells as Anderson Silva? I don't think so. Like, it's a good name, but doesn't quite have the same intrigue. At least in my opinion. So then you're just not really sure what to do with him. Now, his advantage, if he wants to go the legitimate boxing route and he wants to go through the WBC and fight rank guys and try to work his way up some sort of ladder, he is also a promoter. This was under his promotional company. He could take one of those fights against a lower ranked guy and legitimately try to do something, and he just not be the main event necessarily. Or stack it with, one of those other freak show fights. Have Anderson and Vitor rematch each other in boxing or something like that as your co-main.
It's not bad. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just feel like he's too big to take the co-main event spot. It's like Conor McGregor being that kind of thing. I just wouldn't. I love the idea, but that's why I'm so torn about it. Is that if he fights the number 58 guy in the division or something like that, that's not a main event, but it would have to be because of him.
Then so be it. But if the draw is somewhere else on the card, him as a promoter stands to make a bunch of money anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, like when we talk about Floyd Mayweather being a draw, he's a draw, but he's not a billionaire because he's a draw. He is a billionaire because he is the promoter. So he gets such a huge chunk of that money. Jake Paul can enjoy that same sort of thing while keeping this whole kind of circus atmosphere going, while propping himself up legitimately as a boxer if he so chose to. Now, whether he decides to go that route or not, I don't know, because that's a very dangerous route to go when you're talking about your brain health, and 25 is young, but it is kind of old to just be getting into boxing. When you start talking about ranked fighters, you're talking about guys who've been boxing since they were 10. So that changes the dynamic a whole lot, and the skill disparity will become much more apparent, but he is ever improving. He makes a ton of money. He has a serious fan base, and there are names that may not necessarily fit his puzzle, but they fit the overall puzzle that he can still capitalize on if he and his business team are thinking just beyond simply, okay, I'm going to main event against, name your cast off UFC fighter. So just some random thoughts there. Another thing that we should discuss here, and we have to discuss this pretty much any time the casual world touches our world. What do you think of the people that are accusing Anderson Silva of taking a dive? And this was him losing this fight on purpose. How are we taking that? Does this have any traction in your eyes?
Oh, shut the fuck up. Seriously. And we all kind of acknowledged ahead of this that even throughout his MMA prime, Silva's level of engagement and killer instinct can vary according to his whim from one moment to the next.
Yeah.
But that is entirely not the same thing as not putting forth his best effort to win the fight. Like, it's ridiculous. That like flat out, it's ridiculous to think that he would throw a fight or would work a fight. Really any of Paul's opponents, and anyone who seriously espouses that theory is either just blinded by weird resentment towards Jake Paul and what he's been doing, and or just doesn't understand fight sports at all, or doesn't know the first thing about the people that Paul has been fighting.
The biggest complaint that I encountered, and manning the gates when I was working, because I worked the card live, which was a very unexpected thing considering I'd already handled Kattar versus Allen hours beforehand, but I don't want to get into that. The complaint was that Silva was pulling his punches. That was the top thing I saw across the board, is that Silva was not striking Paul with his full force. And I really couldn't conceptualize that Anderson Silva, who has a trail of bodies behind him over the years, would be like, this is the fight where I'm going to decide not to hit the guy very hard. This is a guy who could stand to make even more money if he put Paul's lights out. Like, if say he had gotten up there in the first round, and remember that weird combination where Silva lands like 2 punches, basically the only punches he landed in the first round, and Paul goes like this and he licks his gloves. If he had followed up and bang and put Paul out, which he could have done because Paul was showboating, Silva would be a rock god. He would be back to the pinnacle. No, he would have surpassed, isn't that messed up? He would surpass the heights he had when he was I have the most wins consecutively in UFC history. That little thing that he had going for him, and title defenses, and I'm going to just square around at 205 and embarrass dudes. No, if he had lamped Paul in the first round or what have you, he would have been on a different stratosphere now, and he would have stood to make more money, be in bigger things. The Vitor fight, could you imagine the build up to the Vitor fight? Because he slew the Paul brother. Now, I'm not saying that Paul is the final boss of this encounter, but Silva had so much to gain by winning this fight or winning this fight dramatically with one of his powerful strikes. But Silva's never really been a one-hitter quitter. When can you think of the time that Silva has walked somebody down and punched him in the face and they go down? Usually it's, knees and his knees. A lot of the time he wins with his knees. You can probably remember a couple of his knee knockouts. I'm harping on this on purpose, that you think of Silva and his boxing, you go, oh, that's the thing that did it. Forrest Griffin, that's the one. But that was the whole thing. And Forrest Griffin was on Xanax at the time, but that's a different story. I'm with Duffy. Shut the hell up if you think that Anderson Silva was fixing a fight.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and let's just talk about the actual idea of self-preservation. Granted, professional fighters have a skewed view of self-preservation because they put themselves on the line for a living. But if you're going to take a dive in a fight, you're probably not going to sustain enough damage to where your physical appearance is greatly altered. You're probably not going to break your nose in the process and have blood just streaming out of your face. You're probably not going to do that because that would really suck. Like that just doesn't make sense when you don't have to do that if you're trying to fix something. Not to mention, fixing a fight is a felony. That is a serious criminal offense that would put a lot of people in jail for a long time and cost everyone a whole lot of money. It would not be worth it when you could just have the people who want to fight each other just fight each other.
Yeah.
And see what happens. I think it's just so silly. Like, if you think Anderson Silva was pulling his punches, you clearly, not only did you not watch his MMA career, you clearly didn't watch his boxing matches either, because he didn't just go all out with power. In fact, I think he was trying to hit Paul harder than he normally does in a lot of cases. And I think that's why he didn't have as much success as he had shown previously in boxing. When he kept trying to wing that wild left hook, that rear hook, and he kept just trying to wing that thing, he would kind of kind of paw out the distance and then just throw it, I think that gassed him out a lot. I think that was strategically not the best move. That's not something we typically see from him, doing those sort of shots. And in fact, the most grueling parts of the fight, like when they were in the clinch and they were like up close, and Silva was giving him work. He was giving him a lot of work inside with the uppercuts and the short hooks. He was giving him a whole lot of work. Like, I don't know, the idea, people who watch fights and don't know what they're watching say a lot of dumb things. This is one of those dumb things. The idea that he intentionally lost is just silly. To your point, Jay, how powerful of a figure would Anderson Silva be in everyone's eyes if he just went out there and just starched him?
Oh, he'd be the number one MMA guy again.
He would suddenly eclipse what the Paul brothers have built.
Yes.
And you could easily slot him into all these places. So now all your washed up MMA fighters, you couldn't beat me in MMA. Can you beat me in boxing? And Chael Sonnen fights him. And oh my gosh, has-been boxers. Do you want to try with the has-been MMA fighter? It opens up an entire new space in this circus fight industry. So
you think Chris Weidman wouldn't like to get that one back without having to worry about getting his leg broken?
Absolutely. I mean, Uriah Hall and Anderson Silva could do it again. Like there are so many avenues that could be explored here. Nick Diaz and Anderson Silva could meet each other again.
Yeah.
There's so many things could be explored if he wins. So, right. And quite honestly, some of those things can still be explored with the loss, but it's lost a lot of its luster because we see a 47-year-old man.
The magic's gone.
Yeah,
and
magic's on.
I want to ask you guys this last follow-up real quick question. The magic's gone for Silva as a boxer. Like, we were like, oh, wow, this is really exciting, JCC Jr. and Tito. Oh, man, he's doing it. He's doing it. But now you see him lose to Paul. But is the magic gone for Paul?
No,
I don't think so.
No, absolutely not.
He outlasted him. He outworked him. He busted him up.
Next opponent.
And he dropped him. And he has a next opponent right there. And not Uriah Hall.
Yeah, I mean, he set it up for Nate Diaz. I mean, that's most likely what's going to happen. Yeah. I don't like it simply because of the size disparity that we talked about earlier, but that's probably what's going to happen. It's going to make a lot of money, and we're going to watch. So it is what it is, man. All right. So let's actually talk a little bit of mixed martial arts. I mean, it's going to be a little bit of mixed martial arts because this is kind of the basis of our show. I mean, my Twitter handle is @WalkerMMA after all. Arnold Allen got himself a nice win over Calvin Kattar, but this was marred by injury, as Jay pointed out in the stat of the week. The fourth main event this year in the UFC to end via injury. I guess we should talk about the injury itself here. Kattar tries like a jump roundhouse kick, comes down wrong, and clearly messes something up. The fight is allowed to continue after some questionable checking from UFC quote unquote doctor. And he immediately goes down at the start of the second round after a leg kick.
On the other leg.
Yeah. I mean, it was very reminiscent of Tyron Woodley over Carlos Condit. It was like a facsimile of that. Mm-hmm. Should that fight have continued after the knee injury, gentlemen?
No. Should have been stopped by the doctor. Should have been stopped by the corner. Yeah. He was so compromised. Like, so obviously compromised. And the funny thing is, Tyson Chartier is normally one of the guys who really does have his fighter's best interests at heart. For Kattar and a lot of those, cartel guys, he is both their trainer and their manager. I believe that is the case for Kattar as well. I think so. Like, it sounds cliche to say it, but it does feel like family with Chartier and his people. So it was surprising to me, because this is the guy that made the in the end, wise and vindicated decision to give him a lot of time off after the Holloway fight. And he came back like a fresher, better fighter than he otherwise might have been after taking that many headshots. Yeah, here, like, just running him back out there against... I mean, Allen was already winning before the knee went bad.
Yeah.
And Allen is one of the kind of smartest, most measured, mistake-free fighters. I mean, you don't win now 12 straight fights in a sport as unpredictable as MMA without being a little bit lucky and very smart. And so, yeah, why even push your guy back out there? You really think you're going to be the guy that catches Arnold Allen with a silly jab and puts him down like Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler? No, you're just sending your guy out there for more punishment. And depending on what's wrong with his knee, potentially punishment that keeps him on the shelf even longer than he's already going to be. It was just silly. End that fight. Throw the towel.
It was all I could think of. It was all I could think of when he went down and Kattar went. He did the jumping switch kick, whatever it was supposed to be, flying knee, and you could see it go, and you could visibly see. Oh, there's a separation here. Oh boy, this is not a thing you can just walk off. Okay, that's gonna be fun. Let's see what happens. And he survives to the bell. And I kept thinking, if you stop it now, you can limit the damage to him walking down the stairs, walking to the ambulance, and going to the hospital. That's the extent.
Just have Gilbert Burns carry him out.
Yeah, that's okay. Just do the just married carry him over the threshold thing. I don't care. That's fine. You got big guys at New England Cartel. They can handle it. But instead, you put him out there for further damage when you kick him on the other leg and your plant leg tweaks because it's a big leg kick and possibly damages it more. Now, luckily, here's the luckiest part. The luckiest thing that happened for Kattar is that Herb Dean said, all right, that's enough. That's done. Mm-hmm. At the 8-second mark of the second round. That was the best possible outcome of the send him back out into the fire, because there was no, I'm on one leg, my plant leg is gone. But yeah, I'm going to knock out a guy who, oh boy, hold on a second. Let's think. Oh, that's right. No one's ever knocked him out. So it just wasn't the kind of situation that made any sense to keep going. And you feel for Arnold Allen because he was doing work. Like, he was outboxing the boxer who had said, I think it was prior to the Max fight, that he was the best boxer in the UFC. And then Max shouted at him as he was boxing his face off, who's the best boxer in the UFC now? But he was out working Kattar, and he was on his way. Like, you guys remember when Leon Edwards fought Bilal Muhammad, won the first round. Bilal lost the first round. So Leon was getting up there. He was doing his thing. And you're like, okay, I can see how this is going to go. Then the eye poke happens, and you're like, oh, now what do we do? But at the same time, you can kind of see how the fight was going to go. This was like that, except for it was a TKO versus a no contest, which is different because now Allen is in a position of advancement, and he's won 10 fights in the UFC. Like, he's in the prime position to go to fight. Shamit?
Well,
I don't know.
We're heading in that direction. So apologize for cutting you off, but let's just go full steam ahead in that direction. He called for an interim title shot after the final bell rung. Do we grant him that? Does he deserve that interim title shot?
Yeah. I had to think about this right after the event because I was on deck for the matches to make column for Sherdog, and I said this was a de facto title eliminator or interim title eliminator, assuming Volkanovski is going to take like a full year as a heavyweight or a lightweight or something, and it still is. It's just a little harder sell now because these are still the two guys. Just we didn't have quite as decisive or definitive the conclusion as we would have hoped. But yeah, I mean, you can't run it back right away because who knows how long Kattar's going to be out. So he's still the guy. I mean, there's not much else to say. He's unless you want to bring along one of the guys who's a little further behind in the line, but red hot, like a Movsar Evloev type guy. But Allen's won 10 straight fights. Like, the only people that win 10 straight fights in the UFC without getting a title shot, it's usually because they are boring in the cage and they are like watching paint dry on the mic. Allen is only one of those two things.
Yeah.
He has to be the most boring British fighter on the mic ever.
Oh, he just.
Oh,
Whew.
I mean, if he just had an eighth of what Bisping offered on the mic.
yeah.
Just give him like a drop of Paddy Pimblett. Like,
Throw in some Brad Pickett. I don't care. Just give him some sort of a life.
like hell, Dan Hardy managed to talk himself up, and like Dan Hardy's like pretty tame as like, you know, British MMA fighters come. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like it was like he really didn't know who else was in the division.
I'm so happy. I was going to say that. I'm so happy you said that.
It's like
when
interim title fight.
When he asked him who's next, and he's like, that was the, there are some fighters that we could get in touch with and have them come on the show, and they'd be knowledgeable to be like, oh yeah, Bellator this weekend or whatever. And then there are some fighters who clearly don't watch any MMA unless their teammates in it or they're preparing for the next fight.
Yeah, like, Jordan Breen used to be able to have like Cole Miller on the recap of shows that Cole wasn't fighting on. But just being an ATT guy and being a smart kind of student of the game guy, he'd be able to talk intelligently about 8 different weight classes. Yeah.
And Allen but at the same time, he's not wrong. And I say that because you look at the people ahead of him. Max Holloway doesn't need another title shot. Yair Rodriguez is on a 1-fight win streak that came how? By injury. Ortega's out for probably a good long while. We're actually not sure how long he's going to be out for. Very possibly he's going to need shoulder, so that puts him out. And then you go to Josh Emmett, who's on a 5-fight win streak. That's okay by me. And then Calvin Kattar and Arnold Allen. So you're not fighting down to number 10 Evloev, who just pulled out of the fight with, or I don't know if he pulled out or Mitchell pulled out. I thought Evloev pulled out of the fight with Mitchell. So that presumably means that Evloev's injured and out of that for a while. Bryce is fighting Topuria, so you got that one out of the way. Giga Chikadze is nowhere near ready for prime time again. Korean Zombie, what the heck's he up to? I think he's going to fight in the Soul card. But who's he fights? Sadiq Yusuf, maybe. But yeah, I mean, if Volk is doing the 155 thing for real and not just being like a tourist like Max is, the only fight to make for me is Allen versus Emmett for the interim title. The only one that makes any sense. Yair, okay, fine. Yair, get a win. A real win. You just got destroyed by Max. Max took you down several times to beat you. And it was easy for him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that's a fair assessment.
And it'd be a banger. Oh my God, that'd be a fun fight.
That'd be an amazing fight.
Yeah.
That'd be an absolutely amazing fight. Like the kind of precise calculation of Arnold Allen versus the at times just wanton destruction by Josh Emmett. That is a very, very interesting style clash, and I like that for an interim title fight. If you really need an interim title fight, because there's all these champ talks and moving up and moving down and stuff. I got to see it to believe it. So although Volkanovski he did actually weigh in at 155 last time we saw him on a scale. So we shall see what happens, but at least there'll be some movement in the featherweight division that makes sense if he is to take a brief sabbatical from 145. Gentlemen, let's keep things pushing here. I might as well get the clock going because I think it's time for quick hits. So we're going to put 10 seconds on the clock here. We're going to ask some questions to keep things rocking. Jay, I think I will start with you.
Sure.
Has Max Griffin turned things around to break out, or at 36 is he just another welterweight? Oh! Wow! Did I not have the sound up? Oh! I didn't have the sound up. Let's do that again. Let's do that again, and we're going to have the sound up this time. So, let's try this again.
Give me extra time to think about the question.
Yeah, I know, right? You better have a damn good answer.
Better.
Has Max Griffin turned things around to break out, or at 36 is he just another welterweight?
I didn't realize until after the fight was over that Max Griffin was 36 years old. Has a 36-year-old ever emerged as contender in a lower weight class? I don't know if he will.
No. Kind of hard to disagree with you on that one. Ben, throw one at you. Will Mansour Barnaoui, pronunciation, turn out to be the next big thing in Bellator?
It's quite possible. He is a dazzling offensive fighter. He has all the potential to do so.
What he did to Piccolotti, guys, dang. Like, Piccolotti's not a world beater, but he's styled. And it was his Bellator debut.
People have not done that to Adam Piccolotti.
No.
Very impressive stuff there. Jay, would you do me a quick favor? Ask me a question so I don't sound like a crazy person.
Would you mind talking about Paul Silva's fight card again?
Of course.
You want to go back? Okay. All right.
Let's do it.
All right. We talked about the main event plenty. The other fights, okay, whatever. So let's talk about Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall, he beat Le'Veon Bell, NFL running back, in both of their professional debuts. 4-round fight. Wasn't very good. But Hall won clear cut, 40-36. Was this a one-off, or should Hall keep going in the boxing world?
Well, I'd prefer to see him in something like Karate Combat. It makes sense for him to box if you're boxing this level of opposition. He looked a lot like a kickboxer trying to box, in my opinion. Yeah. So yeah, all the way it was like he couldn't solidly have his feet on the ground when he's landing shots, and yeah, he looked a lot like a guy who just left Muay Thai class and then tried to box. So, all right.
Did you see how many times he got called for elbows? Dude, but I would say if this were a real boxing match, I'm going to say, like just a two boxers boxing, there would have been possibly a DQ because of all the elbows thrown by Hall and all the shoulder check tackles by Bell in that fight.
Yeah, it's like they're confusing their respective sports. I guess it makes sense. At least, it wasn't, he wasn't fighting a basketball player. He didn't like dunk his head or something. So that's good. But Uriah Hall is one of those guys that he has a good enough highlight reel. He's got a name where you can put him in places and it's fun to watch, but he's not exactly going to be a pay-per-view draw. This is kind of the right place for him. I think this sort of thing, just keep it up, I guess, if you're fighting guys like this. All right, so I got a minute on the clock here, and that's enough time to discuss the decision between Khalil Rountree and Dustin Jacoby. Gentlemen, who really won?
I scored it for Jacoby. I gave him 2-1 over Rountree, and I thought it was pretty clear cut. I don't jump in and use the R word very easily, but it's a bummer that this is Jacoby's first loss of this UFC run because he's been so good and such a pleasant surprise. And here he fought a guy that should have been right in his wheelhouse. I thought he handled him. Yeah, it's a tough decision to justify.
I, however, disagreed because I was on Drake Island scoring in the minority because I scored it for Khalil Rountree over Dustin Jacoby. I gave Rountree rounds 2 and 3 because the strike, we don't know the strike totals. When we watch the fight and the unofficial numbers come up, I ignore them completely because they're unofficial, they don't matter, and I shouldn't know them anyway if I were judging the fight. So I thought that Rountree and Jacoby in the second round were fairly even in terms of numbers, but Rountree hit way harder. And for me, it was the knees and the punches for Rountree in rounds 2 and 3 that the impact and the damage were more substantial than Jacoby's largely jabs and front kicks. But I'm not upset about 29-28 Jacoby. I definitely get it.
Yeah, I'm with my daughter pressed the button to turn the bell off, so the bell didn't ring. But it's all right. I'm with Ben on the scoring. I had it for Jacoby also, and I think it's just Rountree landed the harder shots. Jacoby seemed to just put more volume on it, and it becomes more, what do you value?
Yes.
As far as scoring is concerned, I gave it to Jacoby. He looked like the more polished fighter too, throughout most of it. So anyway, gentlemen, let's move on to the greatest title segment in all of media history. I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons, where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not since we last met. I have a feeling we're going right back to Glendale, Arizona, to share some things that didn't quite surprise us or did surprise us this week. So, Jay, start with you. What's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons this week?
I don't know why I'm surprised about this, because of who it came from. And obviously, this is the person who you'd expect it to be from. After the fight, after the main event, Anderson Silva was interviewed, and he said the words, Jake Paul was better than me. And to hear Anderson Silva, or any fighter these days that seems to lose and gives the kind of props to say he was because usually the losing fighter in the post fight will be like dismissive, be like, yeah, he was better than me or whatever, or they want a rematch, or they don't believe they lost, or whatever they might be these days. It seems to be the growing norm of the fighter dismissing a loss and overly celebrating a win. Whereas Anderson Silva, who is the consummate professional, took his lumps. And that to me doesn't spell. I hear that from him, and I don't think, oh yeah, I took the money and ran. I don't feel like that was like the cherry on top for the getting paid $3 million to throw the fight. I feel like that was Anderson Silva comes to grips with age and ability, and was beaten that night and admitted it. And I'm very surprised, because I'm always happy to hear that, because it's good to get refreshing honesty from fighters, even from ones we want to win.
It is the calm confidence of a guy that has nothing left to prove to anybody.
That's right. And that's something you don't hear. And I really, really like that. Even though I hated seeing him lose, that was like the best thing you could hear at the situation.
Yeah, it's like makes it much less likely that we'll see this really turn on an ugly head. Like,
exactly.
So it's like, all right, a guy who very well has claimed to be considered the greatest MMA fighter of all time, one of the greatest combat athletes of all time, can say, yeah, I did everything I had to do. That is spectacular. Ben, do you have I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons for us this week?
Sure. I saw a nice Instagram post from Saturday night showing former UFC light heavyweight champ Tito Ortiz, man also famous for other things, with his arm around a fellow living legend of MMA, just saying, Nick Diaz and I have held this old school shit down for so many years. And just, it was a really nice, touching, probably 200-word elegy, to a fellow legend in the sport. The only problem was that he had his arm around Nate Diaz. So Tito gonna Tito. I mean, it was the most Tito thing ever.
Yeah. That when I saw that, I definitely had tears rolling down my face laughing. Like, just
so on brand. You typed that much shit on your phone and didn't bother to check who was in the photo with you.
Just
Orange County, you elected that man. Just keep that in mind, Orange County.
Yep.
Like Borrachino Depot will never go out of business on Twitter.
No. He stays busy with the Tito stuff, man. That is, and his other favorite subject, Brendan Schaub.
Schaub is the other one.
Did a show in Glendale over the weekend or something.
Oh boy!
And Tito attended, and they took a picture together. So, Borrachino, he's having a good old time on Twitter. All right, my I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment also comes from that night. What in the world is? Oh, someone's calling, and my daughter's about to answer the phone. I'm going to have to call this person back. It's a local number, so it might actually be a call that I should take, but we're recording. Maybe we should pause it. Hold on, let me pause just because it's a job thing. Hello? Hello? Yes, this is Anthony. Someone trying to buy the house. No. This isn't for sale. We like this house. Unless you're talking about a whole lot of money. Yeah. All right. So sorry about that. What an unnecessary interruption. I thought it was a job. Disappointed. If they were talking about selling the Compton property, maybe. But anyway.
Action.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon's moment this week also comes courtesy of that wonderful night in Glendale, Arizona. I was very surprised to see GSP so prominent throughout fight week. Like, this guy played Dana White at the event. He was moderating the stare-offs. He was on the desk for analysis. I mean, he's doing pre-fight stuff with Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell over at Morning Combat, which is a broadcast partner with Showtime. Like GSP was all in on this, and now we know why. GSP appears to be freed of his UFC contract. So, believe he had 5 years from the day of his last fight, and that's what prevented him from being an opponent for Oscar De La Hoya in his proposed comeback fight. I think he was talked to for a few other of the sort of MMA adjacent boxing matches as well, but he had to turn them all down because he was contractually still bound by the UFC despite having not competed since 2017. But now that 5-year period will be over later this week. I think as of Friday.
Of course,
he'll be officially a free agent. So GSP also said, quote, "Never say never" on a return to combat sports. So are we looking at another potential opponent for
Anderson Silva?
For Anderson Silva? I mean, GSP can do a lot of things.
Guys, if we get Anderson Silva versus GSP in the boxing ring, I might quit the sport out of just sheer, I don't want to have, my blood pressure shoot through my nose or something. Just, there's no way that the sport could be so cruel that we finally do get Silva versus GSP in 2023 in an 8x3 exhibition boxing match. Like,
would it make you feel better if it's for a chance to fight Jake Paul?
Or how about this? How about they have it on like that battleship that Anderson Silva and Floyd Mayweather fought on, where there's like no sanctioning, and then they just have a gentleman's agreement that they can just take down each other. They can box with takedowns.
Oh man,
is that okay?
No, just give me like Sanda rules so you can have limited ground stuff and get just no. Now here's the thing. I feel it in my chest now that I feel like
upset.
That's gonna happen. That's gonna happen now. And it'd be like if Khabib comes back and he fights Tony, but it's in BKFC. It'd be like, what are we doing?
Oh man. All right. Well, I guess we should talk about like more actual MMA fights because there are some coming up this weekend. The UFC is back at the Apex Center this week. They are featuring in the main event Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos, a top 10 strawweight contest, gentlemen. Is there anything on this card that you'd like to highlight? Anything that stands out to you other than Neil Magny versus Daniel Rodriguez? Because I know that's the one fight that I'm looking forward to on this card.
Yes, I am very, very extremely excited to see the high stakes featured fight of the night between Chase Sherman and Josh Parisian, which is the fight right before the co-main event, which will give us the next fighter who will fight Jared Vanderaa. Even though I know Chase Sherman already beat Jared Vanderaa this year and he knocked him out. I know, I get it. But because the UFC will jam meaningless heavyweight fights down our throats on the main card, even though they should be promoting fighters that deserve praise, like Mario Batista, like, I don't know, Carlos Candelario, I guess. I don't know, but still, someone will get not knocked out. It'll be 15 minutes of not knocking out, and then we'll go, okay, glad this fight was that high, so I am psyched for it, guys.
They are both coming off a win, sir. There is divisional relevance there.
Woo! They are getting a chance to fight. Oh, wait, no, they already fought.
It is the only time these guys could have fought at any point in their respective UFC careers where the loser is not basically guaranteed of being cut.
Wow. Dude, that means that if Parisian wins, he's fighting Andrei Arlovsky. So we got that to look forward to.
Uh-oh. Ant is surrounded and hopelessly outnumbered.
Oh, no.
Yep, the kids have taken over. They've absolutely taken over. I can't say there's any particular fight that I'm looking forward to on this card. I mean, I could take it or leave it. I mean, I'm kind of sick of having that conversation too. Like, this is another sort of forgettable offering right here. And I know they're gearing up for a return to Madison Square Garden. That's like whoa, bless you, buddy. Particularly star-studded one. Oh man, that was a productive sneeze there. Okay. It just doesn't do anything for me. But I'll be watching. What do you want, man? You want the Punisher? Is that what you want? He wants my Punisher figure that I keep on the desk.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, Punisher.
Punisher.
Yeah. Punisher. So yeah, I'm teaching my kids positive lessons around here, learning about gun-toting anti-heroes, vigilantes. All right, so I think I know Jay, you want to talk a little bit about Fight Circus 4. So I say we do that, and we end this because these kids have taken over the room. So Jay, we've got a lot of mix and match stuff here for Fight Circus 4. Which one of these events are you really looking forward to the most?
So last week and the week before, they're all blended together. It's been a wild one. I listed every fight that was going to be on the card. There was like the living room MMA, the Siamese twin kickboxing, the Lethway, all of those wonderful things. But the fight, personally, I am most excited to see play out is the one called Wheel of Violence. And the reason why I am so interested in that, it's a 3x3 fight where we know the competitors, we know the length of the fight, and we know that they'll be wearing gloves of some sort. And why am I so vague? Because that's all we know. Because before this fight happens, the amazing promotion that is Full Metal Dojo and their Fight Circus 4, which, by the way, there's no paid consideration. This is my sheer excitement, will spin an actual wheel to determine the fight's rule set. And that's what they're going to have to fight under, whether it's under bare knuckle and they take the gloves off, whether it's kickboxing, it's Muay Thai, it's MMA, it's wrestling, grappling. I don't know. And that's the other thing. I don't know all the options that are on the wheel, but there's a lot of madness. It could be like kicking only. It could be like one hand tied behind your back. I don't know. And that's the magic of the Wheel of Violence, is that even now we don't know what fight it's going to be. And while, yes, you can go, oh, I'm upset because you don't know what it's going to be, think of the possibilities. Think of the wonderful possibilities it could be.
Yeah. You know what, Ben, I'm gonna change the question up just a little bit for you.
Okay.
Which one of these events would you participate in?
What a good question.
Oh, I mean, I already have a tentative offer from Full Metal Dojo to go fight like a bunch of barnyard animals. You know, my management is still working it out with them. You know, like if I do, you know, my wimp to warrior moment, it's not going to be like putting in years of hard work to have like a triumphal entry into a cage like Casey Leiden did. It's going to be me in some hotel quad in Phuket, like getting attacked by geese and like house cats. That will be my legacy in this sport.
You
Cub
know what?
Swanson will have to respect me.
As much as I like the Wheel of Violence, like I really like the Wheel of Violence. Like I would sign up for that. I feel very well prepared for living room MMA. It's essentially parenting. So
you're training for it right now.
Yeah,
I mean, right now I'm getting some workouts. I'm getting reps into the gym right now.
Well, just remember the Ultimate Fighter when Joe Stevenson was doing the reps by climbing around. I can't remember who he was climbing around, the heavyweight. He was crawling around him doing the revolutions. Yeah. Anyway,
back when Ultimate Fighter was good. All right, fellas. Well, I think that'll do it for this edition of the Living Death Show, as the kids have decided to start a conversation with one another
Yeah.
to overtake our conversation. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Check out SureDog.com for Ben and Jay having continual fight week coverage. A lot of stuff coming from those two gentlemen. And of course, you can find me saying crazy stuff on Twitter from time to time. So remember, stay beautiful, stay positive, keep preparing for Living Room MMA, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace. Okay,